The classified ad didn't have a company logo. It didn't even have a name. It just read, "Night shift attendant wanted. Echo Ridge bypass. Midnight to 8 a.m. High pay. Zero experience required. Applicants must be comfortable with extreme isolation and strict adherence to protocol. When you are 3 months behind on rent and your car engine sounds like a blender full of rocks, you don't ask questions. You just dial the number." The voice on the other end had been dry, empty. It gave me a time, a date, and a single instruction: drive north on Highway 9. Look for the exit the GPS tells you doesn't exist. And that is how I found myself here. The Echo Ridge tollway was officially decommissioned in 1984. A massive sinkhole, they said. A structural failure that bypassed the mountain entirely, leaving 6 miles of pristine, two-lane asphalt to be swallowed by the woods. But as my headlights cut through the thick, unnatural fog, the asphalt looked perfect. No weeds, no cracks, just a pristine, black ribbon leading into absolute nothingness. And then, out of the gray, it appeared. A lone, concrete island. A single toll booth, illuminated by a flickering, buzzing fluorescent bulb that cast a sickly greenish hue over the dark woods. I parked my car behind the booth, stepped out into the freezing night air, and knocked on the glass. 3 to 7 o'clock, the handoff, the rules. The man who opened the door looked like he had been hollowed out. His eyes were bloodshot, staring past me into the dark, rather than at my face. He didn't ask my name. He didn't shake my hand. He just grabbed his jacket, stepped out into the fog, and handed me a heavy brass key. "The register is unlocked," he whispered. His voice sounded like dry autumn leaves scraping against concrete. "The coffee maker works, but don't drink it after 3 a.m. It makes you sleepy, and you cannot sleep." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. A bit of hazing for the new guy. He didn't laugh back. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers freezing cold, gripping me with terrifying strength. "Listen to me," he hissed, his breath smelling faintly of ozone. "They will pay the wage directly into your account at dawn. Every single cent. But only if you are still sitting in that chair when the sun breaks the tree line. Do not look in their mirrors. Do not leave the concrete footprint. And whatever you do," he pointed a trembling finger inside the booth, "read the laminate." Before I could ask a single question, he turned and walked into the fog. Not toward a car, not toward the main highway. He just walked down the dark, decommissioned lane until the gray swallowed him whole. I stepped inside the booth and locked the heavy door behind me. The space was tiny. A stool, a mechanical cash register from the 70s, a digital wall clock, and a single, laminated sheet of paper taped directly beneath the glass window. I leaned in. The ink was faded, written in a cramped, hurried handwriting. It was titled, "Emergency Protocols for the Midnight Watch. 7 to 1500 hours," the reading. The rules were simple, terrifyingly simple. Rule number 1, it read, "Never accept currency that feels warm to the touch. If a driver hands you hot coins or a heated bill, drop it immediately. Do not place it in the register. Close the booth window, lock it, and crouch below the dashboard. Do not look up until you hear the vehicle idle away into the dark." I rubbed my eyes. This had to be a prank. An elaborate setup for a horror podcast or a hidden camera show. I kept reading. Rule number 2. Every third car will be a black sedan with heavily tinted windows. Do not attempt to look through the glass. Do not look at the driver's side mirror. State the toll price, which is always exactly $1.50. Take whatever they hand you and say these exact words: "Safe travels through the gray." Do not vary the phrase. Do not say thank you. The fluorescent light above me buzzed violently, flickering out for a full 3 seconds before humming back to life. My heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. Rule number 3. If the digital clock on the wall displays 0061, instead of rolling over to 1 a.m., you are no longer on the highway. Do not panic. The air will turn cold. The fog will begin to seep through the vents. Do not leave the concrete footprint of the booth under any circumstances. If you step onto the asphalt while the clock reads 61, you will never find your way back. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I looked up at the wall clock. 12:47 a.m. 13 minutes until 1. And then, from deep within the foggy woods, I heard it. The low, rumbling hum of an approaching engine. The sound didn't approach like a normal car. On a regular highway, you hear the steady, rhythmic whine of tires against pavement, a gradual swell of sound. This was different. It was a heavy, uneven clanking, like an old, rusted frame being dragged over iron rails. The headlights that pierced the fog weren't yellow or white. They were a pale, sickly amber, flickering in unison with the buzzing fluorescent tube right above my booth. My grip tightened around the heavy brass key the old man had given me. My knuckles turned white. It's just an old truck, I told myself. A local farmer who took a wrong turn. A teenager looking for a place to park. But the vehicle that finally rolled out of the gray void wasn't a truck. It was an old station wagon, a model from the late 1970s. The body was coated in a thick layer of wet, black mud, completely obscuring the license plate. The windows were entirely rolled up, foggy and covered in condensation from the inside. It idled just inches from my window. The engine didn't purr. It vibrated, a deep, low frequency that rumbled right through the concrete floor of the booth, vibrating up into the soles of my shoes. I swallowed hard, forcing my throat to open. My mouth tasted like copper. Following the standard training of a job I had only held for 20 minutes, I reached out and unlocked the sliding glass window. The cold night air immediately rushed inside, carrying a strange, heavy scent. It smelled like wet earth and old, stagnant water. The driver's side window of the station wagon began to slide down. It didn't roll down smoothly. It jerked, inch by inch, accompanied by a screeching sound of glass grinding against rust. I leaned forward slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of the driver. But there was no face. The interior of the car was pitch black, as if the shadows themselves were thick, liquid ink. All I could see was a long, unnaturally pale arm stretching out from the darkness, its fingers long and skeletal. Extended in its open palm were 3 silver coins. I hesitated. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to slam the glass shut and bolt out the back door. But my mind flashed to my bank account. 3 months behind on rent. The threat of eviction. Just take the money, I thought. $1.50. It's just a toll. I reached my hand out of the booth, my fingers crossing the threshold into the damp fog. The moment my skin brushed against the driver's pale palm, my heart stopped. The skin didn't feel like human flesh. It felt like cold, wet leather. But the 3 silver coins resting in his hand were burning. It wasn't a mild warmth. It felt like they had been sitting in a furnace. The heat radiated off the metal, instantly blistering the tips of my fingers. Rule number 1. The faded handwriting on the laminate flashed in my mind with the force of a physical blow. Never accept currency that feels warm to the touch. Drop it immediately. Close the window, lock it, and crouch below the dashboard. I pulled my hand back so fast I scraped my wrist against the metal frame of the window. The 3 silver coins clattered out of the driver's hand, bouncing off the concrete ledge and falling onto the floor of the booth. They hissed against the linoleum tile. A thin wisp of gray smoke rose from the floor, smelling faintly of burnt hair. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking with panic. I can't take that." The pale arm didn't retreat back into the shadow of the station wagon. Instead, the fingers slowly curled into a tight, rigid fist. And then, the engine cut out. Absolute silence fell over the woods. No crickets, no wind. Just the violent, aggressive buzz of the fluorescent light above my head. From inside the pitch-black interior of the car, a voice spoke. It didn't sound like it was coming from a throat. It sounded like 2 heavy stones being ground together at the bottom of a well. "You forgot your change." I didn't answer the voice. My body acted before my brain could even process the terror. I slammed the heavy glass window shut, threw the deadbolt, and dropped to my knees on the cold floor of the booth. I squeezed my back against the metal paneling beneath the cash register, pulling my knees tight against my chest. Just a few inches away, the 3 silver coins lay on the linoleum tiles. They were still glowing with a faint, angry, dull orange heat, the smell of scorched plastic filling the tiny booth. Outside, something tapped against the glass. It was a slow, deliberate sound. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythmic click of a long, skeletal fingernail testing the strength of the window. I clamped my hands over my ears, closing my eyes so hard it hurt. Crouched below the dashboard, the rule had said, "Do not look up until you hear the vehicle idle away into the dark." The tapping stopped. For a long, agonizing minute, there was nothing but the sound of my own ragged breathing. Then, a violent cough erupted from the station wagon's exhaust. The engine sputtered, roared back to life with that deep, bone-rattling frequency, and the heavy metal clanking began to move. I stayed frozen on the floor until the sound completely faded back into the distance, swallowed by the silence of the mountain loop. I slowly stood up, my legs shaking violently. I used a plastic clipboard to sweep the hot silver coins into a metal trash can. They clanked against the bottom, still hot enough to warp the plastic bag. I checked the wall clock. 1:14 a.m. My chest tightened. The clock should have read 1:14, but the numbers looked wrong. The colon in the middle wasn't blinking. It was frozen, stationary. I shook my head, trying to clear the static in my mind. I needed to focus. I needed to count the cars. That station wagon was car number 1. According to the rules, every third car would be a black sedan, which meant I had one more regular vehicle to survive before the real test arrived. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The fog outside seemed to grow thicker, pressing against the glass windows like a physical, heavy weight. The greenish light from the fluorescent bulb above could barely cut through it anymore. At exactly 1:42 a.m., the second car arrived. It was a completely normal, modern sedan, a silver hybrid. The driver was a young woman, staring straight ahead with blank, unblinking eyes. When she rolled down her window, she didn't look at me. She just held out a crisp $5 bill. I touched the paper cautiously. It was cold, normal. I took the bill, punched the buttons on the mechanical register, and handed her $3.50 in change. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even acknowledge my existence. She just rolled up her window and drove off into the mist. Car number 2 was gone. The silence returned, heavier than before. I sat back down on the stool, my eyes locked on the dark pavement leading up to the booth. Car number 3 was next, the black sedan. I reached down and reread rule number 2 on the laminated sheet. Do not attempt to look through the glass. Do not look at the driver's side mirror. State the toll price, which is always exactly $1.50. Take whatever they hand you and say these exact words. Safe travels through the gray. A low, deep purr began to echo from the trees. This wasn't the clanking of the station wagon, nor was it the quiet hum of the hybrid. This sound was smooth, expensive, a flawless, powerful V8 engine idling with terrifying precision. Out of the fog, the nose of a pristine, vintage black sedan appeared. The paint was so polished it looked wet, reflecting the sickly green glow of the toll booth like oil on water. Every single window was tinted solid black. You couldn't see a silhouette inside if you tried. It glided to a halt right next to my window. The engine purred, a dark, hypnotic rhythm. I felt a sudden, freezing draft catch the back of my neck, even though the booth windows were tightly shut. I stood up. I forced my hands to remain steady at my sides. Slowly, the driver's side window of the black sedan began to lower. The window of the black sedan slid down into the door frame with absolute silence. No grinding glass, no rust, just a smooth, mechanical whisper. I kept my eyes locked straight ahead, forcing my gaze to hover exactly 3 inches above the car's roofline. Do not look through the glass. Do not look at the driver's side mirror. The instruction repeated in my head like a frantic mantra. From the corners of my vision, I could see the interior of the car. It wasn't just dark, it felt hollowed out, like looking into an open grave at midnight. A hand extended from the darkness. Unlike the first creature, this hand looked perfectly human. It belonged to a man wearing a crisp, tailored black suit sleeve. The skin was pale, but clean. Held between the index and middle finger was a crisp, older $2 bill. I took a slow, deliberate breath, keeping my eyes fixed firmly on the dark sky above the vehicle. "The toll is $1.50, I said. My voice sounded small, swallowed instantly by the vast, quiet fog. The hand didn't move. It remained frozen in the air, holding the bill out to me. I reached out, my fingertips brushing against the paper currency. It was cold, not freezing like ice, but dead, like a piece of parchment left in an unheated basement for decades. I pulled the bill into the booth. Now came the hardest part. The phrase, "Get one word wrong," and the rules didn't say what would happen. They just implied you wouldn't like the alternative. I reached into the cash drawer, pulled out 2 quarters, and extended my hand back out into the cold night air. I dropped the coins into the waiting palm. "Safe travels through the gray," I stated. I kept my tone flat, clinical, exactly as the old man had demonstrated. The fingers slowly closed over the quarters. But the hand didn't retreat back into the sedan. Instead, a sound began to rise from the dark interior of the vehicle. It was a wet, clicking sound, followed by a low, rhythmic thumping. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like a heavy, waterlogged mass shifting around on the leather passenger seat. Then, the driver spoke. The voice didn't sound like stones grinding together. It sounded perfectly normal. In fact, it sounded horrifyingly familiar. It was a voice I heard every single time I looked in a mirror. It was my own voice. "Alan," the voice from the car whispered, using my exact pitch, my exact inflection. "Look at me. Look at what's sitting in the back seat. You need to see it, Alan." A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. The temptation to look down, to just cast a single, fleeting glance into that tinted window, was overwhelming. Every human instinct demands that you look at the thing speaking to you in your own voice. My eyes strained, watering from the effort of staring at the blank fog above the roof. "Safe travels through the gray," I repeated, my voice shaking now, breaking the rule of not varying the phrase, but desperation took over. "Please, just move on." The engine rumbled, a deep V8 growl. "We'll see you on the return loop, Alan," my voice whispered back from the dark. The mechanical windows slid back up, sealing the darkness inside. The black sedan accelerated, its tires making absolutely no sound against the asphalt as it vanished into the mist, leaving behind nothing but the faint smell of ozone and old, decaying leaves. I slammed my window shut and locked it, my chest heaving as I slid down onto the stool. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick up my pen to log the vehicle. I looked up at the digital wall clock to check the time. The display didn't read 1:50 or 2 a.m. The green glowing numbers were cycling rapidly, flashing through nonsense symbols before finally freezing solid. The clock read 0061. The air inside the tiny booth instantly dropped 20 degrees. I could see my own breath forming white plumes in front of my face. And from the floor vents beneath my feet, a thick, gray fog began to pour into the room. The cold was instantaneous. It didn't creep into the booth. It slammed into it like an open freezer door. My breath billowed out in thick, white clouds, catching the sickly green glow of the overhead light. The gray fog pouring from the floor vents didn't behave like normal vapor. It was heavy, rolling across the linoleum tiles like liquid, pooling around my boots before slowly rising up to my knees. I scrambled up onto the wooden stool, pulling my legs up away from the floor. Rule number 3. If the clock displays 0061, you are no longer on the highway. Do not panic. Do not leave the concrete footprint of the booth under any circumstances. If you step onto the asphalt while the clock reads 61, you will never find your way back. I clutched the laminated sheet against my chest like a shield. Outside the glass, the world had changed. The woods were gone. The gravel shoulder, the guardrails, the dark sky, everything had been erased. There was only a vast, infinite wall of churning, motionless gray mist. And then, the sound began. It started as a low, collective whisper. Thousands of voices, overlapping and distorted, echoing from every direction at once. They weren't screaming in agony. They were chanting, a dull, rhythmic drone that vibrated right through the glass panels of the booth. I closed my eyes and began to count out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. I needed to hear a human voice, even if it was just my own, to keep from drowning in the static outside. Suddenly, the chanting stopped. The silence that followed was heavy enough to make my ears pop. Through the thick glass of the front window, 2 pale amber lights cut through the gray void. A vehicle was approaching, but it wasn't coming down the lane from the south. It was drifting backward out of the fog ahead of me, rolling silently toward the booth on the wrong side of the road. It was the station wagon from earlier. The same rusted, mud-caked body. The same rolled-up, fogged-over windows. It glided to a halt right next to the booth. I held my breath, freezing on top of the stool. The clock still reads 61, I screamed internally. Don't move. Don't look. But the driver's side window didn't roll down this time. Instead, the driver's side door slowly clicked open. A figure stepped out of the vehicle and onto the dark asphalt. The traveler wasn't a creature with long, skeletal fingers. He wasn't wearing a tailored black suit. He was wearing a faded denim jacket, a pair of worn-out work boots, and a plastic security badge clipped to his belt. He was wearing my clothes. The man turned around slowly, his movements rigid and unnatural, like a marionette being jerked by invisible strings. He raised his head, and the sickly green light of the toll booth fell across his face. I choked back a scream, pressing my hand over my mouth so hard my teeth cut into my lip. It was me. The face was identical to mine in every way, except for the eyes. Where my eyes were wide with absolute terror, his sockets were completely empty, 2 hollow, pitch-black voids that seemed to swallow the light around them. My double stepped closer, his boots stopping exactly at the edge of the asphalt, just an inch away from the concrete island of the booth. He leaned his head forward, pressing his forehead directly against the glass window. The glass began to crack under the pressure, a spiderweb of fractures blooming outward from his temple. He opened his mouth. A thick, dark fluid began to trickle down his chin, dripping onto the concrete ledge. And in that same stone-grinding voice from the well, my own hollow face whispered through the glass. "Shifts over. Alan." Right at that exact second, the digital wall clock behind me let out a sharp, piercing electronic beep. The green numbers flickered. 1 a.m. The fog on the floor vanished instantly. The freezing cold snapped back to a mild room temperature. Outside, the trees, the guardrails, and the dark night sky materialized back into existence as if they had never left. The station wagon, and the thing that looked like me, were gone. I sat alone on the stool in the quiet booth, the echoes of that stone-grinding voice still ringing in my ears. I had only been on the clock for 1 single hour, and I had 7 more hours until dawn.